Hi guys, this is GSMDome and I'm here with a review of the Motorola Edge 60 Pro. Compared to the Motorola Edge 50 Pro, it comes with a much superior battery, 6000 mAh, and it's silicon carbon. It's also rather skinny for this battery size. It measures 8.2 mm in thickness. It moves from a Snapdragon CPU to a MediaTek Dimensity 8350 Extreme Edition. It's still got an OLED screen but with a lower refresh rate, and there are three 50 megapixel cameras on board and a color spectrum sensor. Pantone colors for the case, Pantone colors for the calibration of the main camera, and of course a dedicated AI button which triggers Moto AI that now even includes perplexity, which we'll talk about towards the end of the review. The price is 500 euros, at least in Europe, and let's get straight to it. So, design-wise, it's an edge phone, which means it's curved on the sides, which means that screen protectors will have a hard time staying attached to it. It also means that the bezels are very narrow and that gamers may have some trouble with the phone because their fingers may slip on the curved sides. It's actually quad curved. It's also curved in the corners, as you can see for yourself. I enjoy the fact that it's a narrow phone, which is easy to use with a single hand, and it's only 8.2 millimeters slim. It also weighs something like 186 grams, which anything below 200 grams is fine in my book. We got a leather imitation at the backside for extra grip. There's also a purple version of the phone. We got a glass at the front, Gorilla Glass 7 eye protection, and a polycarbonate, well, it's actually plastic frame. There's also a blue version of the phone, and it's IP69 certified, meaning it can take a strong jet of water, hot water, and it also has military standard certification, meaning it can take extreme temperatures, humidity, vibrations, and even some mechanical shocks. Now, as far as the screen is concerned, we're dealing here with a panel which dropped some hertz. The predecessor had a 144 hertz OLED panel. This one has a 120 hertz OLED panel. I'm not complaining about it, just saying. Plastic OLED 6.7-inch Full HD Plus, up to 4500 nits of brightness, very immersive, and HDR10 Plus support. Believe it or not, we have wide view angles here. A pretty large palette of colors, so the color palette is pretty generous. Nice contrast and good brightness even in the full sunlight. Now, we measured the brightness and achieved 846 lux units, which means is that on the 77th spot from all the phones we've ever tested, and it also means it's 1 lux above the iPhone 16e, surpasses Samsung Galaxy A36, and at the same time surpasses Motorola Razr 50 Ultra and the OnePlus Nord 4. Galaxy A56 is above it by 13 lux, and the predecessor was higher with 910 lux. So yeah, there's that. Now, Motorola did swap some components here, including the fact that it gave up on the Snapdragon 7 Gen 3 from the Edge 50 Pro to replace it with a MediaTek Dimensity 8350 Extreme. It's a 4 nanometer CPU. We've seen this on the Oppo Reno 13 Pro. It's got a Mali GPU, and we're lucky enough to have the version with 12 gigs of RAM. There's also one with 8. As I said before, 12 gigs of RAM and 512 gigabytes of storage. It's UFS 4.0, which is always good news. Now, the phone doesn't overheat, but let's see how it's doing in the benchmarks. I'm particularly curious about the throttle test of this MediaTek CPU. So, CPU throttling test, we lost 14% of performance in 15 minutes. Not bad, but also not a record breaker. However, in Antutu 10, I'm actually quite pleasantly surprised for a mid-ranger. 1.39 million points in Antutu 10, 36 spot. It's quite the jump from the predecessor Edge 50 Pro, which had 830,000 points. We surpassed Google Pixel 9a, Galaxy S23 Fan Edition, OnePlus Nord 4, and even Galaxy A56 by 500k points. Now, in Geekbench 6, we're also doing fine, beating former gaming phones and also the Galaxy A56 in the multi-core test, or above the Pixel 9a, Zenfone 10, and quite a few other flagships. Now, as far as the 3D things are concerned, we're around the iPhone 16e, Motorola Razr 50 Ultra, in solar-based Slingshot Unlimited. We surpassed the Pixel 9 Pro XL and Huawei Pura 70 Ultra, so yeah, definitely impressive even in the graphics department. If you're concerned about the temperature, well, you shouldn't. So in benchmarks we achieved 37.4 degrees Celsius, while in games we achieved 34.9. Definitely no overheating here. Now, the battery is pretty impressive. We have a silicon carbon 6000 mAh unit here. The predecessor had a 4500 mAh battery. The charge has decreased. It was 125 watts for the predecessor. Now it's actually 90 watts via wire. We also have 15 watts wireless charging and 5 watt reverse wired charging. So it's actually an increase of 33% in battery capacity, and this is one of the tests we did. It's the video playback test with a pretty impressive 27 hours and 42 minutes. However, nowadays we see multiple phones with 25 hours plus. Now, while this is okay, you should know that we surpassed the likes of Honor Magic 7 Pro, Huawei Pura 70 Ultra, Nothing Phone 2, so I would say we're doing fine. The predecessor only had 18 hours. Yeah, so that's pretty solid. I'm disappointed, however, by the PCMR continuous usage test with only 9 hours and 14 minutes. I don't have any explanation for this. It could be a very power-hungry processor. I actually do not know how to explain this. I would have expected at least 15 hours. Well, that's about it. So, yeah. Let's see how other models did. We're in the area of the Zenfone 4, which is a very, very old phone. As you can see, hundreds of other phones above us. So we surpassed Galaxy Z Fold 3, Galaxy S9 Plus, Huawei Nova 11 Pro, Motorola Edge 50 Neo, Motorola Edge 50. At least we surpassed some of the Edge series models. But above us, even above something like 13 hours, we find the Xiaomi 14, we find the OnePlus 8T, Realme 7 Pro, a bunch of Realme. So check it out here. You can see here that the Pixel 9a, Realme 14 Pro achieved 20 hours, and this one only 9 hours. The charging will require, well, for a full charge, 1 hour and 14 minutes. We don't have a charger in the box. You use a base CS1, and I would say it's quite long, but after 30 minutes, you're at 49%, which is the norm nowadays for phones. Okay, so the predecessor had the wireless reverse charge, by the way, which is no longer present here. On the acoustics front, we have a speaker at the bottom, and the earpiece here serves as the other speaker for your music output. And as usual, if you go into the Moto app and all the way down into the app, you're going to find play, you're going to find Dolby Atmos, and you're going to find quite a few settings. Spatial, smart audio, music, movie, game, and also a custom equalizer with manual, treble, bass boost, virtualizer, volume leveler, and so more. I'm going to leave it to smart, and I'm actually going to try out some tunes. Okay, so this should be sufficient. I would say we have pretty nice bass here, a high volume, and only small vibrations when the volume is at the maximum level. The voices are a bit shrill for me, but I like how the speaker is placed here so we will not cover it in gaming. So the high notes are a bit strident. That's the idea I got here. We did a bunch of tests with a special decibel meter tool. It measures the level of decibels achieved with this phone. So volume power is 85.1 decibels at the top and 89 decibels at the bottom, one of the highest values I've seen recently. Usually most phones don't go past 85, so it's pretty impressive. It surpassed 600 other phones. It's on the 110th spot, which is actually not that bad considering what's happening nowadays. We surpassed the Xperia 10 II, Xperia 1 6, which is a flagship, OnePlus 9, Moto G34, Realme 14 Pro, which is more relevant because it's recent, Moto G200, and several other OnePluses and Oppos. When it comes to multimedia, which is basically gaming, 96.7, it's okay. It's above the Samsung Galaxy A56, for example, and the two speakers are, I would say, pretty well balanced. We're also doing better than the Motorola Edge 50 Pro, which had 93.6 decibels. So we're fine in the area of the speakers. Now let's talk a bit about the cameras. I'm going to start with the 50 megapixel front camera, which is quite impressive if you ask me. f2.0 aperture, HDR, 4K capture. At the back side we have a main Sony Lithia 700C sensor, 50 megapixel. Somehow the aperture has been decreased, so from f1.4 last year now we have f1.8. We do have optical image stabilization and multi-directional PDAF, so that's a plus. Another 50 megapixel camera is the ultra wide one with 120-degree capture, f2.0 aperture, and PDAF for macro. Finally, telephoto camera, 10 megapixel, 3x optical zoom, and OIS. Plus there's a color spectrum sensor and Pantone colors delivered here. The main camera does 4K 30 frames per second capture, and you've seen the camera options in the unboxing, so let's get straight to the gallery. Okay, so first of all we have the selfies, which I would say are quite solid here. We're dealing with a 50 megapixel 50 megapixel selfie camera, which actually captures a lot of details and there's a pretty satisfying bokeh. So they're more detailed compared to the predecessor and compared to other mid-range phones. We have textures, we have skin naturally rendered, and very expressive eyes. even in the darker areas. That was at the entrance of the building, and this is under the full sunlight, where we're once again getting a lot of details, but I'm not very sure about the focus. For example, the focus here doesn't make me very happy, and some of them look a bit grayer than expected. So I expected a wider palette of colors. I'm happy about everything here, the details, the very good bokeh, but I wanted maybe a wider array of colors. I also have a bokeh, and believe it or not, we also did some solid bokehs with a sort of a flare-like effect like Oppo offers, without marketing this too much. The good thing is that you can actually notice where you were, if it was a darker area or a brighter area, according to the shades of your face. That's an interesting aspect. Okay, so now it's time to discuss about the regular shots. I'm actually happy with the color calibration. In general, although there have been some overexposed areas here and there. Overexposure usually happens in the background, the things you're looking at the distance, oversaturation, overexposure. So once again, in general, the colors were fine, minus the background. Pretty good focus on close-ups. We have a lot of very well done close-up and macro shots of flowers, late spring flowers, and also portraits or bokehs of objects, which are excellently done. 90% capture rate without flaw, without anything weird going on into the blurry area. These are, I would say, flagship worthy captures. So basically the macros and the portraits of objects are some of the best things you can capture with this handset. Okay, so I would say that when it comes to the ultra wide, there are some color changes compared to the main camera. HDR loses some capabilities, and sometimes there are scenarios when on the wide camera we have overexposure in the foreground, in the background, which doesn't happen on the ultra wide, which feels a bit darker. Now, the hues of green in the park are fine, but on a sunnier day you may encounter overexposure, so keep that in mind at all times. The sky is rendered pretty fine color wise, and once again we have quite a few close-ups to brag with. Now, of course, since you have the telephoto zoom camera, I actually tried it out, so this is the actual distance, starting to zoom. Even at 6-7x, things are quite decent, but the colors will definitely change. Once you go to 3x or further, you'll definitely notice some color changes, things get a bit darker, I would say. But you're getting the extra details of the zoom. You can actually tell the number of the car here, even though this is how far we actually were. So that's, I would say, useful. Okay, so another taste of zoom. To be honest, above expectations for 3x. I would even go as far as to say that it's maybe better or the same as what you're getting on a Samsung Galaxy A phone with a telephoto camera. At the end of the day, the close-ups are very spectacular, and the zoom is above expectations. But the ultra-wide changes the colors just a little bit, and so does the zoom, so be careful about that. Okay, this has been the daytime. Let's go to the nighttime. These are the nighttime shots, so I would say that the Edge 50 Pro before it did pretty well when it came to nighttime photographing. And the same trend is kept here. It's very hard for me to tell you if this camera has evolved from the Edge 50 Pro. They're about the same. I don't feel any huge changes. Maybe in the close-ups, maybe even in the zoom. I wouldn't stick to ultra-wide too much, so keep that in mind when you're taking a photo at night. Ultra-wide doesn't exactly deliver, which is to be expected on any mid-range phone. Now the good news is that the zoom works quite fine here. So this is something like 3x, and still you could see the flowers in this flower shop, which for me is pretty impressive. We even captured a bit of the moon, which I didn't expect to come out so fine. The colors are also quite decent if you're in well-lit areas. So apart from the ultra-wide, nothing to object here. So yeah, even the vegetation is fine. The street light halos are a bit big, some of them. Not exaggerate, but all in all, I would say it's a pretty decent camera. However, the predecessor was also fine, possibly the zoom being the biggest upgrade. Now, these have all been photos. Let's check out the videos. We should have them available here in a handy manner. Okay, so as usual, we test the colors first. While they may look decent, once again, if there's a full sunlight outside, you may experience some oversaturation, overexposure. Here it's not, but when it comes to vegetation in the park, it may happen. Stabilization test is fine. I would recommend sticking to 4K regular stabilization. Horizon lock drops the resolution to Full HD and doesn't exactly impress me very much. So regular stabilization works fine. We also tried out the selfie camera. Decently fine. Below the Pixel 9a, iPhone 16a or the Galaxy A56, however. The background is not very impressive if you want to be a TikToker. We do have some nice close-ups though, and very fast focus on the foreground and the background. Plus some very good details up close. So the focus is one of the cores here. I think we also tested the zoom at some point. This is once again a stabilization test with a weird sky here. Let's find the zoom test. Okay, so this is the zoom test. The slight steps taken between the levels of zoom are a bit annoying. And you can see the image getting clear all of a sudden at 3x and staying clear at 5 or 6x, not bad. But the stepping of the zoom is a bit annoying. Let's hear some tunes. Actually, the level of noise from this little cleaning car. There's also audio zoom, by the way. All in all, typical mid-range phone, nothing to write home about, just decent and clear and decent stabilization and fast focus, as most of them who surpass $500 have nowadays. Okay, so a bunch of nighttime videos are available as well. Some reflections, some big light sources, which is to be expected from a mid-range phone. Some of these shots were taken in Full HD because of the whole horizon lock and because of the whole 60 frames per second being only for Full HD. Nice microphone capture here. There is a bit of noise in the background. Things are a bit murky and gray here and there, but if you want 4K and decent zoom, things are still quite good at night. Be careful with the stepping and the levels of the zoom. That's all I can say. So all in all, remember the portraits, the focus, the stabilization, the bokehs of objects and the close-ups. On the connectivity front, the phone obviously delivers 5G connectivity. There's also Wi-Fi 6E tri-band, NFC for fast payments, USB-C 2.0. Keep in mind, 2.0. The predecessor had 3.1 with DisplayPort, which is weird. There's GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, Beidou, Navic, and Bluetooth 5.4. We have a dual SIM setup, nano SIM and eSIM, and the calls were pretty loud and clear. I did a bunch of speed tests, actually quite a lot of them. You can see the results here. So on Wi-Fi, we achieved a top of 892 Mbps in download and 866 Mbps in upload. 5G was a bit more disappointing, only 284 Mbps download stops and uploads 77.1. I actually tried out various carriers, Vodafone and Orange, and I wouldn't say that one surpassed the other. So yeah, that's about it. We also have airplane mode, Wi-Fi, mobile data, hotspot, tethering, VPN, private DNS, Android Auto and Smart Connect. Now, as far as the software is concerned, the phone runs on Android 15 and the promise here is actually 3 years of OS updates, not 2 like I mentioned in the unboxing. So apparently that was a mistake, but still it doesn't compare to the 6 years of the Galaxy A series. It's supposed to be a pretty clean Android. You can customize it from the Moto app, as you can see here for yourself. You have personalize here with the classical features like themes, fonts, colors. There's also icon shapes. There's also the lock screen, display size and text, layout, fingerprint animation, sounds, dark mode and edge light. So you already know this. There are also the gestures available here. There are a bunch of tips. Moto Secure includes the pin pad scramble, as well as the secure folder and a protection against scammers and network. Display features and a fun controls, including one for gamers. There's a special side window which is triggered with the whole frames per second thing, with the performance and capture of the screen and all that. So this is the typical Moto app. Now, aside from that, there's also family space, so you can connect to your little one or the elderly. You can create a profile, you have parental control, you can follow the kid on the map when he comes from school. And then we have the unplugged. If you're tired of the stress of notifications, Instagram, WhatsApp, you can only have your basic apps like phone calls, messages and camera. You can customize the experience. Then we have Smart Connect, which is supposed to be the opposite of that. It lets you connect to your PC, your watch, your tablet, your TV, your headphones, and there's also a feature here that lets you use the phone as a webcam or as a hotspot for your PC, mirror it on your PC, share a cursor on those, or simply do a voice command on the phone, start Instagram, it will start on the PC. You can tell on the PC to start Instagram on the phone, and this applies to a variety of other apps which you can move between in all those areas. Now, the AI part of the things is the following. So we're here, and I have this circle to search. The phone has been recognized here, or close enough. And we can also have follow-up questions, and once you press it, you can also look up the music that's playing around you or translate what's on the screen. Now, aside from that, you can also press the power button to trigger Gemini. You can share the screen with Gemini, and you can also do more things with this assistant from Google. And you can press here if you want to have a live conversation with it. You can also share your camera feed and ask it, for example, how to arrange the furniture in the room or what to cook with something that's in your fridge. If you press the other button, this one here, and keep it pressed, you'll be treated to Moto AI, which has evolved. Moto AI 2.0 received more actions. Catch Me Up will do a summary of your notifications. Image Studio will generate stunning images, while Pay Attention records, transcribes, and summarize what you're saying. Useful for meetings, conferences, and all that. This is Catch Me Up, and you can enable it with a special Moto account. Now let's see what else it can do. So it can also summarize messages, take notes for you, start the camera, start a game, or create a memory. Once again, Image Studio is here. You can start creating things like the Apple Playground. You can create an avatar. You can also sketch to image, which is a name we've heard before on Samsung devices. So for example, this four-legged creature should better come out fine. Okay, you can also add more color to it. Watercolor, realistic, sketch cleanup. Let's try realistic. We can also choose between multiple designs. So basically Motorola is now up to speed with its rivals. I would say even above them, because the Galaxy A series doesn't get the benefits of some of the cool features that the Galaxy S models do. This is what the AI understood. It was closer to a horse, honestly, rather than a rabbit, but still pretty photorealistic, if you ask me. Now, my favorite part of the whole AI thing is that if you're in a browser, for example, somewhere, and you keep this pressed, you're also offered an extra option, Explore with Perplexity. This also happens to documents. It can understand the screen, create suggestions, do follow-ups. It can compare Moto Edge 60 Pro specs to other flagship phones. That's just one example of the use it can do. It's very good for students, for pupils, for people who work in the science department. And here you can see we have the Perplexity app, which is closer to Wikipedia and Carta, closer to a search engine rather than a regular chatbot. I didn't have it pre-installed, I had to install it. If you don't have it installed, it will be applied from the browser. The Moto AI bar is present here at the bottom at all time when you need it. And now, aside from that, once again, Perplexity is pretty useful if you want to look stuff up. You can even upload PDFs so they can be turned into a summary. And Moto AI can also record your voice and keep it somewhere and create a, well, it can create a note of your voice in real time, and you can store it afterwards and do a summary. Once again, useful for classes, useful for conferences, and useful for interviews and journalists. So that's what the AI can do. In some countries, you're going to get Perplexity Pro, 3 months of it, bundled with the phone. That's pretty much it as far as Moto AI is concerned. I don't think I forgot anything. So yeah, you can also create a playlist, by the way, using AI. Of course, we also have the whole goodies from Google. So if you go here and select, let's say, this photo here, you do edit. You have your suggestions, dynamic, enhance, warm. You also have your AI features here. You have to back it up to the server. You're going to be suggested to create a beautiful sunset, for example, change some of the colors. Maybe if you want to get rid of this car from here, you can actually move it or resize it if you want to. You can get rid of this car or other things like that. You can also start to erase them. So yeah, there's just some examples of the magic that you can do here, and the car is gone. A pretty good manner, I would say, but this is the Google magic, not the Motorola magic. So this is pretty much it as far as the Motorola Edge 60 Pro is concerned. Pretty fascinating software things available here, and I'm only scratching the surface. It's time for the verdict, and I'm going to start with the pros and cons. On the pro side, it's slim, it's good looking. At the same time, it's pretty light and well built and comfy. Because the fact that it's pretty grippy and pretty narrow. The Pantone hues are nice. I would also have to say that the performance of the CPU is much higher than the predecessor. Sufficient RAM and storage, UFS 4.0 storage is a plus. I like the fact that we're getting a silicon carbon battery here. Quality, bokeh, macro, even the zoom, good camera stabilization and night mode. We have plenty of AI, much more and much better AI than we're getting on the Galaxy A series, for example, closer to a Galaxy S or the Xiaomi 14T. IP69 certified and military standard, and a pretty crisp and bright screen, which is, I would say, pretty immersive. Okay, now on the cons, well, the software support for only 3 years of Android is a bit of a bummer. There aren't huge camera upgrades from the predecessor. We even have downgrades like the aperture of the main camera. The video capture doesn't impress when it comes to the exposure and saturation, and the battery is a bit underwhelming in continuous usage, just 9 hours. Also downgrade USB-C from 3.1 on the predecessor from 2.0 here, and it doesn't have now display port support. So Motorola decided here to offer us something close to a flagship. I mean, considering the 350 megapixel cameras, 3x optical zoom, the whole AI, they could have sold it as a flagship because we don't have an Ultra as far as I know, but they're selling it as a mid-range phone. So that's basically the core benefit of it. I consider it superior to the Galaxy A56 in AI only, because when it comes to continuous usage, maybe also the selfie part, the A56 is superior. But aside from that, I would say it's a lovely design when it comes to, well, looking at it and using it. And for gamers, it's actually superior power compared to any Exynos mid-range phone. That's it from us. You're going to be using the phone for gaming if you want to, for pretty decent photos, for vlogging, and of course you're going to be using it for productivity, even if you're not only a corporate guy, but also a student or an engineer. That's it from us. Goodbye.